Everybody, it's MicheleMarieDalene, and today we're going to talk about a couple of things that may seem on the level to be completely separate, but when you start getting into the deep nitty-gritty are very strongly related. And one of the first things I want to talk about is Wintervile. Now, I haven't worked on part 2 yet. I've been trying to rack my brains to figure out how to make it all work. Besides, I had some personal things in my life to deal with simultaneously, so it kind of slowed down the creation process. But I also wanted to cover what Deborah Adams and I were talking about, which was if I was to successfully manage to get the Republican nomination to run against whoever the Democrats put up for the governor for the state of Connecticut. And that's a great concept because the two seem to be completely separate, but they're actually based on the same thing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wintervile story. One of the people suggested that Queen Michelle should declare war against the state of Connecticut. No, she doesn't have to. After the Lowell-Weicker creation of the state income tax in 1991, the Litchfield County people, which were mostly well-to-do, affluent people, many of them were Democrats, in the story, decided to have their own uprising and file articles of secession against the Lowell-Weicker administration. Upon doing so, Litchfield became its own sovereign nation. Others that did the same thing and also successfully seceded was the Waterbury County as well as New Haven County. And so these three, both Waterbury and New Haven later rejoined the state of Connecticut, but the Litchfield remained its own. And then in 2003, after Richard Banks was convicted of embezzlement by the Litchfield Superior Court, he was told he had about 2 years to get the money back after he did his 11 years in term in jail. Unfortunately, at the same time, Winsted was barely able to hold its own. And so many town projects actually suffered. This is also based on the real story of what's going on with Winsted today. So Winsted, realizing that its town government was a disaster, realizing that the town of Torrington would love to annex Winsted as part of itself. If you ever study the history of the different towns that are now part of Torrington, you have several towns, including Burrville, Bakerville, and even Neepaug, which are actually real towns, but they are actually now been annexed in part into either New Hartford or into Torrington. Burrville would be definitely in the Torrington area, and Neepaug and Bakerville are been annexed to New Hartford. Now, obviously, the people of Winsted, this failing town, did not want to become part of Torrington, which was becoming a huge, and it already is in real life as well. It's becoming a large city. It's the biggest city in Litchfield County. It's got a huge population, but unfortunately, it's also got the big city issues as well of rampant taxes and drugs and illegal immigrants. as well as a lack of good, successful jobs. One of the things that in the book that Queen Michelle did was to, instead of basically raising the taxes to the impossibly high rates, she realized that she needed to bring income back into the town as creative ways to produce a product, sell the product, and then the companies can pay lower taxes, but then the people of Winterville, when they pay their yearly income taxes, will actually be providing additional funds to the town kingdom's coffers. What I did not mention in the book is, I did mention in my notes, is that the outlying towns will continue to maintain their own governments. They will continue to remain republics, with either mayors or first selectmen as they originally were. They're part of the kingdom, but they're allowed to be their own choice of government. But in the city of Winterville itself is the absolute monarchy. So New Hartford, Barkhamsted, Norfolk, Colebrook will remain their own elected governments as they've always been. Well, now let's take a look at the real world, and then we'll take a look at how it ties into Deborah Adams' idea of me being a governor candidate for the Republican Party. The state of Connecticut, we have had a few governors in the state. We've had a few Democrats. We had a few Republicans. One of the most well-liked Democratic governors was Ella Grasso. This is back in the 70s and early 80s. Sadly enough, Ella Grasso got sick and died in office. And but she was well liked as a Democratic governor. But the problem was, as a Democrat, she saw the tax and spend. She saw the desire to bring in immigrants and illegals from other states. In this case, there was a strong desire to bring in the people from the territory of Puerto Rico into Connecticut. Now, territory of Puerto Rico is not the same thing as Iran, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan. That's completely different. But what the difference is that this is a territory of the United States. It was not a country that was being overrun by violent extremists. But what was happening was, in order to encourage them to come, the state of Connecticut did everything they could to sweeten the pot by offering people jobs and creating opportunities and giving entitlement programs, which some of them still haunt us to this day. Some of the leftovers of these programs are now feeding all these other illegals that come into this country, into the state. When your state's doing good and you got a good money coming in and you're showing a state profit, there's a little more room for being nice about giving away free money. But the truth of the matter is that's not the way it works in the real world. 1991, Lowell P. Weicker ran into a problem, which was the state was seriously in a short cash. They were running out of money and really quickly. Realizing at the time Connecticut had a lot of well-to-do people, after mulling it through with both the Republicans and the Democrats in the state legislature, in his on the state address, he pointed out is that the state of Connecticut would now create an income tax. In addition to that, we would lower the sales tax from 7.5% to 6.35% sales tax. Because he realizes that sales taxes are regressive and actually create problems for those who are least able to pay. Whereas if a properly created income tax is a progressive tax based on what you realistically make. Well, ever since that point, the state of Connecticut for a while, under him, was doing very well. The state was actually making a budget again. The state had a budget surplus. Even under his Lieutenant Governor Rowland, he still was making a Rowland was the next guy. He was Lieutenant. Was he? I think so. Okay. Well, we had a few other Republicans too, and one of them was Governor Rowland, which unfortunately kind of tried to continue on where Lowell Weicker left off. But unfortunately, because of ethics violations and taking little bribes, he got indicted and went to prison. And so when he went to prison, of course, we had a Jody Rell, which was his lieutenant governor, came in. Jody Rell did everything she could and successfully did to begin the process of returning the state of Connecticut and keeping the state in the good standing. Well, after serving a full term as her own, and she won that overwhelmingly, after taking over the reins from Governor John Rowland, the state, she decided not to run again, and the Republican Party had a candidate, I don't remember who it was right now, but it wasn't very well liked. I don't think it was a very well represented candidate. And so there was, of course, the Democratic candidate, because the state is pretty much a blue state. So he's been pretty much a blue state. And Daniel P. Malloy was their candidate of choice. Now, Daniel P. Malloy, along with other Democrats in the state history, have done tremendous disservice to the state. So, again, just like after the O'Neill administration took over as lieutenant governor, took over for the passing away of Ella Grasso, we now have, we've had this guy for 1.5 terms, and in this case, the whole 2 terms. But no matter what, the state of Connecticut is again this bleeding red. So now, how would I, in my book and in real life, be able to begin the process of fixing the problem? Number one, we have to first look at what's causing the problem, and that's this. Something that Queen Michelle dealt with in Wintervile, or you will find out about soon, and what I would have to do in real life, and what Donald Trump is also doing in real life, is you cannot keep increasing the corporate taxes on businesses and regulations on businesses, because that's going to drive them away from you. Businesses, especially small businesses, are the driving force of the economy. Most all businesses, of course, started out as small businesses, and they are the mom and pop shops, the mom and pop groceries, maybe a local insurance company that happens to be started by your neighbor. These businesses are the cornerstone and the backbone of the American economy. So you don't want to sit there and try to fleece them and see them as the enemy, so that you can try to get money for giving to illegals and financing programs that do not work to encourage people to go to work. Rather, what you want to do is make a productive environment where business is going to want to come into your state. And that means lowering the corporate taxes, lowering the business tax rates, lowering excessive regulations. Because if a business is a major part of the local economy, if you can create jobs, those jobs will feed back the tax money into the economy. And then you will still be ahead because you also will have the corporate taxes as well that you combine between your income taxes, your corporate taxes, your excise taxes, and other taxes. You can still make ends meet. But that's just the income side. Now we haven't talked about the outcome or expense side. The state of Connecticut has unfortunately a big problem when it comes to the outcome side. They love to spend money they do not have. As my friend Ed keeps reminding me, and I agree with him on this, trying to get or offer an AHL or NHL team or even an NBA team or even Major League Soccer team the option of buying or renting the Excel Center, better known as the Hartford, formerly as the Hartford Civic Center, and giving them an idea that we're going to finance half the restoration and repair of this building that has fallen into disrepair. And the costs, I forgot what the price quote was. It was really, really astronomical. As I would say is, no, we're going to do this differently. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the building up for sale on the commercial real estate market. Outright. For sale. By owner. Okay? In addition to the sale, as part of the terms, we would give a tax break for as long as 5 years, which at that point the interested participant would begin the process of renovation work. So for 5 years, they wouldn't have to pay any state sales taxes. Okay? Or income taxes, I'm sorry. They wouldn't have to pay any property taxes to the state of Connecticut. Rather, they would just, for as the state levels go, is they get away tax-free. They may still have to pay taxes to Hartford, but well, that's something the town and the business work on together. The idea is that the state of Connecticut unloads a white elephant, gets it off its tax base that they can't even afford to fix up. In addition, we have other properties like that. Instead of trying to basically go out there, and the same thing happened with Richard Kraft and the New England Patriots. Okay, in Foxborough Stadium. It didn't work out. Some people got mad about that, but you know what? I would say is give them a tax easement or tax abatement from on the state taxes for property taxes for 1 to 5 years, and let them do the work. And they got all that tax money that they're not paying the state of Connecticut to do the work. And then after the 5 years, the property will be reappraised, and then they will pay regular taxes like everybody else. Which we're going to have to consider lowering anyway. The state of Connecticut tax rate is ridiculous. The corporate tax rate is out of this world. It's not something that I would believe is going to help if we keep things as they are, because the state is just bleeding red right now. As far as the entitlement programs go, now I got some people who point out to me is you're not likely to get elected if you can't get the minority and the low income vote. That's true, but even the low income and minority voters, those who have some understanding of reality, are likely to kind of agree with me on this. There is a group of people in this state that are not disabled to the point where they are incapable of doing any gainful employment, but they just collect benefits because it's easier. However, at this point, the number of jobs available is not enough to supply all those people with gainful employment. Because of the high taxes and the bad political administration work of taking people away, you can't expect to just take away the welfare benefits for those who do have some ability to work and expect that they're not going to do the equivalent of metaphorically drown in their own sorrows. What we need to do first is to rebuild the job base, bring companies back here, then in a way that would be fertile grounds for people to go back to work. The whole idea of disability, for example, was intended to help those because of multiple handicaps, or fairly severe handicaps. Yes, legal blindness is one of them. The ability to make sure that they could at least keep some basic needs met. The problem is that the system has not been keeping up with the real world expenses. Majority of my friends get about $760 a month, and yet some people, as one of my case managers told me, they said they're happy to just receive $760 a month and live in a substandard apartment and have all the kids collecting WIC and all that. Excuse me, whoa, back up here. Okay, that's not the way the system was supposed to work. Okay? I don't have a problem if a person has a truly documented total and permanent disability. And they go through and they got it documented that even if they could find gainful jobs, the likeliness of them being hired by a prospective employer is limited. There are people that the disability program and the Social Security disability program was intended for. Not just somebody who goes down to Bender and Bender and declares that they're disabled because they have bad breath. I'm not joking you. That really is considered under Social Security rules a way that you can collect disabilities because you have halitosis. I'm not saying halitosis doesn't stink. I ran into a person with halitosis. That was pretty bad. Okay? But does that mean that in a place with adequate ventilation, say an outdoor job, say your landscaping or yard work, that person can't physically still work? This is where we need to seriously reassess what is a good way to deal with Social Security disability on the federal level, and what the state of Connecticut Department of Social Services does on the state level with its general assistance programs for those who are disabled and blind. Next thing has to do, which is related to that, is job creation programs. Now, I noticed from working with the Board of Education Services of the Blind here in the state of Connecticut that they tend to want to work with other companies to create jobs for the handicapped, the legally blind in this case, and the blind. And that sounds great. But what if the person lives in an area where there just is no mass transit to successfully create jobs? Then they run into a problem because there's no way to get to work for somebody else, but they may be skillful enough to create their own employment options. Perhaps they may need a little bit of training, maybe some understanding of business practices, accounting, business management. In other words, they really may not have all the knowledge of what's going on, but they got a brain, they got a business plan, they got an idea what they want to do, and they're willing to take that risk. And let's be honest, being an entrepreneur is a risk process. It's not like you're going to guarantee that you're going to be always coming home with, an income each month. Let's say, each week, say, of $10 an hour for 40-hour week. For someone being an entrepreneur, you might be working close to 60 to 80 hours a week. I know that this channel has not exactly been what I call easy place. I mean, yeah, when I started 60 years ago, the channel had a whole different workflow. It was kind of like a sideline. Today, this channel is becoming more of a full line, where the Social Security check I get from disability is being invested every month into this to turn this into a lucrative business. And that is fine, by the way. For those of you who like to say that's not cool, I double-checked it with YouTube, and that indeed is quite fine. This is registered as a business. Then that's what I do. And also, fans of your work are also allowed to make donations to you as well. But let's not get into all that. Let's focus on this. So when you got these people that want to create these jobs, they're going to be eventually hiring employees. They're going to be eventually needing to buy more materials to make goods and services. They're going to be renting office space. They are going to be doing things that, unfortunately, a lot of leftover things in here. Anyway, they're going to be doing a lot of things that you would expect in a business. And those processes of running that business is going to help the economy because those goods and services that business needs is going to provide money for other businesses to continue making those goods and services available. And both sets of businesses do pay taxes to the Connecticut and federal government. And when you do that, you also are hiring people that can go with work. Even with a person with halitosis can still go out there and mow the grass for this company. Really. What about the others on Social Security disability? Is there any realistic way, based on what one of my case managers said, why some people have refused to go to work? Should they continue to be receiving a government pension? I don't think that's fair. But, as I said, if we don't get the economy turned around where there's going to be people wanting to hire people, taking away unnecessary checks to those people would make no sense at all. Like Donald Trump says, however, we're competing with other states. If they don't like it, they can always get the hell out. Right? No, not really. Because you know why? Because for them to get the hell out means that they're going to need money to get the hell out with. It's expensive to move. I know. Personal experience. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to do something better. But I think that any kind of entitlement reform would have to come after we start seeing the economy turn around. Then once we got jobs being created, that is when you can start working on that. Next thing has to do with infrastructure. I might as well bring this up. The state of Connecticut has many bridges that are declared unsafe. It has many roads that have the Department of Transportation, state of Connecticut, has spent lots of fancy money on feasibility studies instead of actually fixing the roads. They just spend more money just to special consulting teams that we consult, but nothing physically is fixed. That's going to stop because there are things that the state needs fixed right away. Making sure that your roads and your bridges are safe for your people to get to and from where they got to go is important. Okay? And that is where we have to find a way to get those immediate, big, dangerous projects fixed first. But you're not going to do that without state income. So we start back to the jobs business. This year, we had a problem with the renter's rebate. Second year in a row, actually. Last year, check came late and was sliced and diced. This year, it came late and was sliced and diced. Almost became nothing. Okay? The problem is that as long as people are expecting that people are going to, once they always constantly expect a handout, yes, they continue to think they're going to get a handout. I know what that feels like. I've done it many times too. I'm honest here, okay? I'll be honest. Yes, I've done it too. But after I looked at the situation and the lack of sustainability, I realized that the state of Connecticut is basically circling the drain. And so is California. California just as much. In fact, with the two C's, Connecticut is actually worse off than California. California has a huge population, but it's a large state. And a lot of benefits that this large state has is they have a lot of property and they have a lot of industry. Connecticut, not so much. So, we're going to have to change things. I was going to mention all this in the yesterday on the live stream, but unfortunately I kind of got sidetracked and I didn't really get a chance to focus on those issues that I wanted to address. And I'm not saying it's a perfect plan. It's still kind of a work in progress. Just as Winterville is a work in progress. Queen Michelle in the book is going to have to deal with a lot of the same identical issues. As an absolute monarch, she's going to have access to the tools to rule by fiat. She can decide what is and will be. Whereas, as a governor candidate, gubernatorial candidate, that doesn't work so well. You do not rule by fiat. You got to deal with the state legislature. Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. And every single one of them has special projects. And every single special project is very precious to that person. And the question is how to find a way to work it out so that everybody, it's a win-win. It's not possible to have a win-win. It just takes longer. So, I hope that you continue to read or listen to the story of Winterville. I'm going to work on it some more on Friday. Actually, I'm starting to kind of get it together as of Wednesday. I'm already working on the plot. Ed is, by the way, for those of you who want to know, is now at about 6 o'clock. He's in Washington, D.C. on his way to Florida. Because he said it's too expensive to stay in the state of Connecticut. Especially on entitlement. And he's right. It is. But like Jesus also said, paraphrasing him, the poor and the disenfranchised will be with you always, where I will only be with you for a short time. And then that short time, Jesus did a lot, didn't he? But I think if Jesus was alive today, I think he would agree that there are things that the state has to do to make positive changes. One of my users also mentioned about the Donald Trump alleged statement of people in shitholes. Let me tell you something. Connecticut is a shithole. At this point, the state of Connecticut and the state of California are both shitholes. It's not, and so is the state of Illinois. Unless these democratically blue states, liberalism which drips out of their pores like corrosive acid, it is basically destroying your economies, realize that they need to make changes. It will be just like what happened with the town of Wintervile and the Republic of Litchfield. Not long before all group of counties in the state decide that they want their own sovereign freedoms. In the case of the story, the Republic of Litchfield was when Lowell Weicker enacted his income tax. In the case of Winterville, it was when the town realized, at the former town of Winsted, that they could not meet the Republic of Litchfield's mandate to get their town coffers restored in 2 years' time. Very, very sad. So while my Winterville story may be fiction, what I've learned in the process of planning the story is going to be of use as a gubernatorial candidate as well. It's very interesting to see how the two parallels will work out. By the way, CNN, if you would like to quote me on the shithole candidate comment, you certainly may do so. Maybe that might be the kind of thing that's going to get people to realize that Connecticut is indeed a shithole and needs to change its government policies. Maybe it could even be a help to my candidacy. Oh, by the way, I want to talk about one more thing, and that's this. My handicaps. I noticed that a lot of times I got the same man who calls my phone number on my studio line. And there's something in his voice I cannot use, despite everything I have tried, cannot negotiate. I don't know why that is. But I can tell you right now, I don't think that's going to bode well for my candidacy, because what if I can't hear the questions reporters are asking me? Does that mean that I'm simple? Do they think that mean that I'm considered simple because I may not understand what they're saying? Could somebody on the ultra left declare that because I am handicapped that I should just sit around and just eat little Debbie Swiss cake rolls and act like it's okay? Questions like that are pretty good. Well, I don't know about you, but I do know that all the phone conversations I have been in on, it's the same person, the same voice, same vocal inflections in every single phone call. And it's the same voice that basically makes it almost impossible for me to understand what he's saying. I've had friends that have better hearing than me try to understand what some of the stuff that the guy is saying, and they could not even fully translate what he was saying any more than I could. And that's very, very stressful. Because, like I said, I got a sharp brain, but I have lousy ears and lousy eyes. But as a person with disabilities, of multiple disabilities, it doesn't mean that I don't want to give it a good, hard try to change things for the better. Okay? That's a fact. I want to learn how to adapt and overcome my handicaps. But I also want to show people that I do have a very smart intellect and intelligence. And I want to do the best I can to more than likely inspire other handicapped individuals to try to run for government if they really want to. They may not want to. Let's be honest. If sitting listening to government meetings is not exactly exciting. If you ever sat there and listened to a city council meeting, it's so drawn out. In some cases that you just seriously just jump up and down and go saying, can you get to the main meat and potatoes, please, without all this pomp and circumstance? I really want to seriously like to be able to get home in less than 30 minutes. That's my Asperger's talking. I don't like long meetings. And I'm sorry that we didn't really get a chance to go through that yesterday. But maybe next time we have a live stream, which could be potentially next Sunday. I haven't decided yet. We can focus on the topic that we want to focus on and stick with it from beginning to end. And let's see what the future leads us. But for the time being, I want to thank you for watching this. It's going to be snowing tomorrow in Connecticut and Wednesday. I don't know how much. I saw possibly maybe a total accumulation of about 18 to 20 centimeters of snow, which isn't really a lot of snow, but it's still enough snow that you're not going to forget it. But the temperatures will be fairly well, about -1°C, so you're not going to be freezing to death, unlike the Book of Genesis event. But some are saying is that we could still see some serious wind-blown snow tomorrow night in the winter weather advisory. So plan ahead. It's going to be starting in the afternoon. And we had some flurries today, but it didn't come out to be much. And as far as, am I still going to consider going to Maine? Well, I'll be honest. Obviously, if I did successfully run as governor, if I did successfully get nominated, and if I did successfully get elected, I couldn't go to Maine now, could I? Because obviously, I'd have to be here in Connecticut serving as a governor in Hartford. But on the other hand, if everything else did not work out, Maine would be a considerable option. But there are things about Maine we can discuss for another day. Right now is not that time. So for now, I want you to stay safe, stay warm, and stay dry, and stay out of trouble. Okay? Bye-bye, everybody.